possible, the fruition of the wildest imaginations of the Jewish people, of the biblical imagination, I threw my destiny in on the... I am often asked, why did I come to Israel? Why did I settle in Jerusalem? What is the motive from coming from a glorious country such as Australia, the lucky country with everything and beautiful Mediterranean climate, to the haggle and the struggle of the Middle East bazaar? And I am quite clear about the reasons. The magnificence of a heritage, of a depth of association with the land of Israel, with an incredible geographic region, a meeting point between Asia and Europe, between the ancient, the prehistoric migration routes, between the Syrian-African rift, great eruptions and geothermic movements of earth-shattering proportions, which have made the difference in the way that humans have evolved. The centrality of Israel as a migration route, but also, as I say, everything is squeezed in very tightly there. There is both the Great Rift, the Dead Sea, the deepest and the lowest place on earth, which was used as a migration route from prehistoric times until the present. And as migrants moved from Africa to Babylon, they could also choose to come up through the hill country of Judea and Samaria, of Jerusalem and of Shiloh and of Nablus, to cross over the hill country to move towards the Mediterranean. So this entire movement and meeting of civilizations, and Jericho being the entry point, and one of the oldest cities on earth, an exchange of peoples and ideas and of migratory classes. And so coming from Australia, which is very much multicultural, and it is a magnet to many nations, and is actually far more multicultural probably than Israel, and it certainly is not lacking for diversity. However, the Middle East, the challenges of the Middle East were such that they were felt, it was very much part of the heartbeat and the pulse. And if one were able to, let's say as an intellectual or as a thinker or as a person interested in the spirit, how the spirit moves, how the imagination functions, to engage the Middle East and to engage the incredible heritage of Israel, of the Bible, of the Semitic heritage, which really is the story, the tale of a family and tribes. The anthropologist in me wanted to study. The adventurer in me wanted to experience it. The mystic in me wanted to embrace it in the depth of my spirit. And for reasons of social justice and for reasons of challenge to the very source of who we are, what is our identity, how we interact and embrace or reject the other. all of these ideas, the self-development, self-awareness, social awareness, I had a hunch that the Middle East would be the place to be, to tackle the big subjects, the great subjects that religion has been intrigued with for millennium. The material that constructs transgenerational movements, that is able to withstand the weathers of time, that is able to regenerate and restructure within the imaginations of a schooled group. I see myself as part of a movement, and even an ideological or a religious movement, to return to Zion and to be part of the building of a great project, as great as possible, the fruition of the wildest imaginations of the Jewish people, of the biblical imagination. I threw my destiny in on the bandwagon of utopianism, of Jewish utopianism, of Jewish messianism. I probably can say that that was my early indoctrination and my education. And whilst I went through a period of rejecting it and wondering, was it worth it? For those who are interested in the large questions, to be on this stage and to encounter the parties, the people, the individuals, the ideas, the methodologies, it is interesting, it is exciting, it is a great frontier for a young, brave individual wanting to explore the great unknown, to take on the subject of social cohesion, of peace on earth, of inspired economy, of political reconceptualization, of solving humanity's greatest woes, of addressing the subjects which have been so earnestly sought after for so long, and to do so with a fresh set of cards, with a new reality, with a new day, a bright blue day for the startup nation, with miracle technology and disciplined people, migrants from all over the world, with the insight and with ambition, within an army that has had to fight many wars, with a young mobile and industrious population. All of a sudden, the meditative, mystical, identity-seeking prototype meets an incredibly dynamic country which is leaping and bounding. And that is actually how I came to Israel, as a seeking ideology and seeking to work on the great mystical political problems. And in front of my eyes, Israel developed incredible technologies, and it seems that this was what the world was looking for: a leader in incredible incredible techniques and tools and innovation and upward mobility and deployment and of instruments and techniques which would make life easy. And that's what Israelis were doing, born out of their service in the army and immigration and long holidays that they took after the army and the opportunity to travel and to cross reference, and also that young Israelis would go to the army at the time that other youth would be playing around drinking and wasting a lot of their most precious times as teenagers, 18 to 21. So that so many of the dynamics in Israel were so fascinating and unexpected, and they also came to change me. And one of the things that I like to say is that a spiritual entity, a religious entity, a interpretive entity could not start with and finish with the same interpretations and the same religion. It is a deeply dynamic and in fact a wildly dynamic process where we change. And especially I have found how much I have changed in this journey and meeting the unexpected Israeli industriousness and the startup nation that took over Israel the last 10 years and has been an incredible backdrop and has really given meaning to so much more of the Bible than I had ever expected, because really innovation is part of the biblical creed, the stories of the angels and of the tabernacle and of the labors and of the design of the tabernacle, and these were all about innovation and are about the techniques and about tools. The entire focus of the Bible was about that, but Israel in the diaspora was really much more about trade and about economics and about law and about medicine and about services, and it didn't fully fit in the biblical story as I learned it growing up. And coming to Israel and seeing actually only in the last 5 years, I'd say in the 21st century, where Israel emerges a technological innovator, that the biblical story takes on a new possibilities, dimensions for reinterpretation, and it seems almost exciting again to be part of a visionary movement. Indeed, I was part of several visionary movements and failed movements, many of them were. And so suddenly to encounter the great plethora and surplus emanating from technology, and then to understand that the rationalists amongst us always supported the idea that knowledge is the profoundest source of everything spiritual and everything that the lover of the divine searches, and it gives a completely different reinterpretation of what religion and what devotion and what spirituality and what mysticism is, that the pursuit after accurate technology is in fact a deeply mystical pursuit. The ability to restore the sight to the blind through medical procedures, to cut cataracts using lasers, and to embed lenses or digital lenses on the eyes with bypasses to the brain to let the blind see. this miracle technology gives a new lining on many tractates of religious thinking which were left in the dust, unable to interpret because the interpretations would seem so far out. So that now, in this remarkable time, whilst for the person seeking significance during the 90s and 2000s, where was a struggle, today there is significance to be found for every individual. Every individual is able to develop the tools and the syllabus and the experts, the counselors, the guides, the experts, gurus, rabbis, and scientists in any field that one wants to explore, so that being now in Israel, in the Holy Land, sharing the same technologies as people all over the world, but left with just the imagination, I ask, why not reach out to the entire world with a vision? The vision is a common one amongst idealists, that of peace and of prosperity and of mutual development and of cooperation, but especially of the nations of the Middle East. And a few years ago that seemed outrageous, but today, against the backdrop of the signing of the Abraham Accords, this is a reality, and the ability to coordinate our relationships with the Arab world and to cultivate a sense of even family, of tribes, of different tribes coming together for the purposes of betterment, to better the world. The story, the narrative that can be told of this meeting of Isaac and Ishmael, of the Arabs and the Jews, of the assembly of the children, the descendants of Abraham, the biological and the spiritual descendants, and the ideological and their friends, and children of the covenant. The story is a wonderful story, and I think that people genuinely need a narrative of their identity, just like a child wants to know who their father is and their mother, and to have pictures, and to have story, and to have affirmation. I don't think that it is only a religious idea. It is probably deeply embedded in our biology and our psychology, which relates to our biology, so that the world may be deeply thirsty for an intact tradition. And the irony of Judaism, and especially of diaspora Judaism, where I come from, and Orthodox Judaism, is that it does not seek converts. It does not seek to preach. It does not seek to convince others that it has a genuine or a point for a universal point for the world to rally around. It is really for the Jewish community. In fact, I have heard by many non-Jews, Christian theologians, that are express hurt and insult that the Jews do not care to try to convince them, to try to proselytize them of the truth of the Jewish interpretation of the Bible and of things to come, so that a vision for the world, emanating from a Jewish perspective and from Israel and from the perspective of a genuine movement that wants to create and wants to develop covenants with the good families and upright people in the world for the betterment of the community, and to blaze a way for the blooming of society. This vision, as expressed in the prophets, which no one can doubt the commitment of people who have come here to see that fulfilled. For those who have doubts of the intentions of the people who are working so hard for the peace in the Middle East, let them only go so far as the prophets of Jerusalem that spoke of incredible blessings that will come. I like the analogy of blessings. The word comes from the Hebrew barech, or kneecap. The idea of a kneecap, which is the very basis of leverage, where you have two joints working in different ways at different degrees. And when you have diversity, just like the hand to the thumb, it is one of the great technological advancements of humanity to have a grip and to have a negative grip on something, and to have converse force, and to be able to have diversity within your field. And that is the sign of a strong society. That is why America is such a remarkable society, because it called, give us your weak and your aged and your sick. It was not afraid to accept the weak. It was interested in the different and in the free, and those values are invaluable, and it is those that Israel also shares. Maybe the Jewish people did not have the strength or a bastion of independence to able to express these deep ethos within its cultural system. But as Israel has become stronger, its natural culture and habits are coming to the fore, and as the culture and the festivals and the Sabbath and the rest days and the plethora of harvest and enjoyment, and as really life on the land becomes good, and as it is celebrated as it was in the biblical past for hundreds of years, happily and with great merriment, and with song and trumpets and literature and culture, the same is going to happen in the future of Israel. The only difference is that we are going to go so much further. The leaps and bounds that we are going to make, not only as a nation, but as the entire humanity, is just incredible. And that leaves Israel and Jewish people and Jewish theology in a bit of a dilemma, either to broaden one's horizons to the extent where it can go, or to be left behind. And for a Jewish theologian in these times, where the expectation is to run with the champions at the top, and to imagine things which could not be imagined in earlier times but can be done very easily now. This is an incredible smorgasbord, a veritable pantheon of the imagination. And it just happens that the Jewish syllabus, the Orthodox Jewish syllabus, built over 2,000 years to include Bible and Talmud and Mishnah and law and Midrash and mysticism and Zohar, and ethics creates an entire archive of reference for us to use and to draw from and to build an idealistic, political, legal, technological, imaginative structure which can cohort with many of the possibilities that the future will bring. The futuristic imagination of the Jewish people, a reference to the messianic times, to the redemption, to the world to come, to the resurrection of the dead, to the eradication of poverty and of hunger and of social disharmony. So while I may have migrated to the promised land from Australia many years ago in a youthful, idealistic, utopian and possibly naive and uninformed and possibly also dogmatic way, today the circumstances have it that the possibilities, that the dogmatic approach that miracles beyond explanation can occur seem to be now the matter of the writing of software and the pressing of buttons in a automated world. And so that the frontiers of an incredible future lie ahead, and it is, to my mind, a future for idealists, for visionaries, for the people of the imagination, and I feel very much at home in this space. And a message to my listeners. Thank you very much. I'm interested in your opinions. I think that this is a great forum to discuss and to hear and to deal rigorously with the questions that are on our minds. So feel free to write questions, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and to participate in any way you like. Hope to see you then.